Good morning, everybody. As we go to the Chitas of today, Thursday, the fifth reading in the portion of Parshas Re'eh, we're holding in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 14, verse number 22. Asa to Asa, it's called Tuah Zaracha. You should always tithe all the produce of your seed. Hayetza Shana Shana, that goes out year after year. Rashi says, what's the continuation? And asa to asa. You must not cook a young animal, you must tithe. What does one subject have to do with the other? The answer is, in effect, the Holy One, blessed be He, was saying to Israel, do not cause me to cook the young and tender kernels of grain when you're still in your mother's womb, in their husk. For if you do not separate tithes correctly, I'll unleash a scorching east wind when the grain is about to ripen, which will batter the crops, as it says, in the ears before developing into standing grain. The same applies to the first fruit, shana b'shana. From here we learn you may not tithe from the new crop on the old. And you should eat this grain before your God. In the place that God chooses to rest His name, Sham there, Maisa de Gandcha, the first of the Maisa tithing of your grain, Tireishcha, your wine, Titarecha, and your oil, B'chayris B'karcha, and the firstborn of your cattle, B'tzeincha. The man tilmad, you should learn liyiras Hashem Elokecha, to fear the Lord your God, kol hayamim, all the days. Rashi, again, this is talking about the second tithing. It's the second tithing, which the Torah has already taught us to give the first tithing to the Levites, the Kohen. I mean, the Truma to the Kohen, the first tithing to the Levites. As it says, speak to the Levites and tell them, when you take the tithe of Israel, and it gave them permission to eat in any location. You don't have to be in Yerushalayim. You may eat it anywhere. This commandment to eat in Yerushalayim is talking about the second year tithing, what's called Maaseh Sheni. And when the journey is too long for you, it's unable for you to carry, because the place which God your God will choose it's far from you. Where God wanted to put His name there, meaning Yerushalayim, that because God is going to bless you. What it means, God's going to bless you. The produce will be much to carry, so you're going to be hard to carry all the second year tithing, because you're going to have so much produce. You're going to want to, and you're going to have to give a tithing of all that produce. How are you going to schlep that all to Yerushalayim? So therefore, nasata b'kesef, you change it into money. And then bind up your money that you changed it into in your hand. And then come to Yerushalayim. And you'll come to Yerushalayim, to come to the Beis Hamikdash. And then you'll take the money, and you'll buy in Yerushalayim everything that your heart desires. Babakar, batzayin, whether it's in the cattle, the flock, by yayin, in the wine, by seichar, in the strong wines, whatever your heart desires. You'll eat it in Yerushalayim before God your God, and you'll be happy, you and your families. Rashi says is a general statement, and then it says cattle, flock, wine, and wine. Cattle, flock, new wine, and old wine. I said strong wine. So then we have a klal uprat, and then you have a klal chazar v'chlal v'chol asher tishon nafshecha. This is what we say: klal uprat uklal. You have a general v'choil. You have the prat baka batzayin. Starts to say, enumerate what is he talking about, and then he goes back to Bachlal, Kol Asher Tishacha, Chazav Aklal. What do you learn? It's again a general statement, just as the qualification, species, entities that derive from the earth even indirectly, and are fit for human consumption. So you're not allowed to take the money and buy furniture with it, go on sightseeing. It has to be something that you can eat. So the general rule is a klal, prat, uklal, general, particular, general. You say it every day in your davening, prat. You have to. It's teaching you that the klal needs to be like the prat. So that's like the prat is something that it comes from the ground or lives off the ground, and is eaten. So too, everything that you're going to buy there needs to be eaten. So you can have shawarma, and you can have some good falafel, but you cannot buy things that are not in that category. Verse 27, Valevi asher b'sharecha, and the Levite which resides in your cities. Leitazvenu, should not forget the Levite. Ki ein lechele v'nachle imach, because he doesn't have an inheritance with you. Now she says, don't forget, even though you're going to give Maisa Sheni, you're going to bring up the second year Maisa, you're going to bring it up to the Yerushalayim, you should never forget to give the Levi his first Maisa. And that's why it's called Maisa Rishon, the first tithing. Ki ein lechele v'nachla, if he has neither portion nor inheritance, this excludes fallen gleaning, leket, shikha, and peah, which is the law of a farmer who has a field. He has to leave the forgotten sheaves, he has to leave the unharvested corns, and peah, the onless corners. For he also has a portion in them, just like you, and thus they're not required tithing. So that's why we learn that the leket, shich and peah doesn't have to be done meiser on that things you leave over in the field. Why? Because the Levi and the poor man he does have a chelik. If you have a poor Levi, besides getting the meiser, he can go and collect the leket, shich and peah. Verse 28. Mikate shalosh shanim, at the end of 3 years. You have to make sure that all the tithings have been completed. And it should be placed in your gates. What does it teach us? This teaches us that if he delayed giving tithes on the first and the second year of the sabbatical year, he must remove them from his house in the third year. So by the third year, you need to take care of all the tithings of the previous years. And then the Levi will come because he has no portion. Vager, and the convert, Vayasam, and the orphan, Va'almana, and the widow, Asher b'sharecha, the poor people that don't have any money, Va'achlu v'saveyu. Since you're going to put it out in the public, then people will come and will take whatever they want. L'man yivrecha Hashem alekecha, so God will bless you. B'chol ma'asi yadecha, and all the works of your hands, Asher ta'aseh, which you do. Now she says, Baba Levi, he'll take his first tithing. Vager Yosem, he'll take the second tithing, which is this year belongs to the poor. The third year belongs to the poor. There's no second tithing on the third year. It's called Ma'aser Ani, the tithing of the poor. You are not to eat it yourself in Yerushalayim, as you're required to eat the second tithing of the previous 2 years. So therefore, what do? It's Ma'aser Ani, and it goes to the Ani. And the Ani can come and take it. Give them enough to satisfy them. Based on this, our sages says, one may not give a poor person collecting tithe at the threshing floor less than a half a kav of wheat and a half a kav of barley. You must also go to Yerushalayim with the second tithing on the first and the second years that you have delayed bringing, and make the required declaration. I've removed from the holy produce from my house, as we learned in Parshas Emer, that there's an obligation to make that statement when you do that, when you finish the years of tithing. And I removed the holy from my house, as it's specified in the passage, when you finish taking the tithes. And that completes the Chumash for today. We now go to the Tanya of the day. We're still in the middle of the 8th chapter of Tanya. Alter Rebbe ended off with a question, that if the chesed of the Eibishter is a maila far beyond the action of man, Why doesn't why doesn't we doesn't go straight to the chesed? And why is there need for the action of man? But the concept is derech mashal will understand it from an analogy. Anointing garden, when you the analogy is when you sow a seed and you plant a kernel. The shoots sprout from the seed. And the tree, its fruit with its fruits from the kernel. They are not the essence being of the seed nor the kernel at all. Because if you know that the seed needs to first rot into the ground. So the essence being not spent and is decayed in the soil. And they are thus not the source of the vegetative property. What's the true power of vegetation is the audits, is the land. The vegetative property is in the soil itself, rather than the particular vegetative power that results in the seed or the kernel, which bring about the growth of the shoots and the tree and its fruit. Meaning, the vegetative power of growth is a divine faculty that enables the physical growth to result from a spiritual property in a manner of creation of exonilu. Here we have the concept we see in the earth. That's why Hakol Mina Oretz, everything is from the earth. We can learn a lot from the earth. Emes me'eretz titzmach, another expression, that truth comes from the earth. Because the earth shows this concept. The earth shows a concept of that's created something from nothing. In a way, it's not totally, but in a way, we have a creation of something from nothing. The kernel is put into the earth, and the Eibishter made that if you have the right situation, the kernel rots, and it awakens up something in the earth, and now the earth gives off. And if I take care also, it's in my involvement. I make sure to water the earth. I make sure to fertilize the earth. I make sure the earth is healthy, and now the earth comes out with a concept of a tree. So the grain and fruits result from the universal power of vegetation and growth. Tatshe, that's why the expression tatshe haaretz. The Eibush, it says that the earth sprout. That's a mayim elikim. That's why the Gemara says that there's a malach on every blade of grass and itself also a tree that tells it to sprout forth from the earth, and tells the earth to give life to this tree, to this vegetation, and not from a particular seed or kernel. Then why plant them in the first place? So why do you need kernels? Why doesn't the earth give forth a tree without its kernels? It's only that the earth vegetative power does not manifest its power outwardly from the potential to the actual. The Eibishter made that's the susila tata of the concept of vegetation, that it needs to have this garden. Without the garden, without this kernel that's ultimately going to rot, without this kernel, it's not going to give out, it's not going to come forth its vegetation. So even though the earth has within it the potential, so there's an unbelievable potential in the earth, and the earth has, as we see, the earth has unbelievable potential in all kinds of fruits and vegetables and plants, etc., and flowers. It's unbelievable, the power of the earth. But it's all in potential and not in reality until that garden, until that seed is put into the earth. And what happens? The Eibush showed humanity that God made that the kernel needs to rot. It's not the kernel. The kernel needs to rot. The kernel is the awakening power. That's the kernel needs to decay. And it becomes part of the earth. Right? So you cannot see the kernel anymore. Now you just see the tree that comes out, but you cannot. The kernel has disappeared. The growth of original earth, vegetative property that is implanted in them as they grow, has been consumed by the vegetative property of the earth. The earth has consumed that kernel, and because the kernel has within it the koyach to awaken up within the earth, the power of giving forth something. And the earth and the kernel became one entity. You cannot see the kernel within the earth anymore. They united, became one particular power growth that resulted in the seed or kernel, which unites with the earth, universal vegetative power. And in this way, the vegetative power, property, actualizes, so it means the kernel, by becoming one with the earth, awakens up the power of the earth. And it brings out its potential, and it fuses the vitality that makes possible for the growth of the shoot that will relate to the seed that will be sown. Through the very great increase, with a very great increase in any single shoot, so that one ear of corn comprises many grains. And so too, it's not that one kernel creates one fruit. This kernel brings about the potential of the earth that it creates many fruits and many more kernels. And moreover, the very nature and the essence of the fruit itself, it's not only in quantity, it's in quality. Also, the nature of the tree. You take a kernel, can't even eat it, and you put it into the earth, and there comes about a tree that has beautiful apple fruits that are delicious and edible. So, moreover, the very nature and essence of the fruit immensely excels the nature and the essence of the planted kernel, in that the bland and tasteless kernel serves as a source for delicious fruits. And so too is the nature of the produce of all of the earth, all peiros, all fruits. And I grow from the seeds, like kernels such as cucumbers or high gavna. Thus, fruits and vegetables are not quantitatively superior to kernels that serve as their respective source, but are qualitatively superior as well. The difference between grain and its original seed, however, is only by the quantity. All is this because the stem and the root of the vitality of fruits issued from vegetative property is in the soil, is in whom is in the potential of the earth. Which this earth includes the vitality of all fruits and causes them to grow. Nevertheless, a kernel, moreover, the kernel of a specific species desires must be sown. You're not going to have an apple tree if you're not going to take an apple kernel and you're going to plant it into this ground. And now, as I explained, Vagarin Hazarayim. So this kernel, that's the analogy. The kernel is the asarusa de la tata. The kernel that's sown to the ground is only an arousal from below, to awaken up the earth. That's an arousal from above in this analogy. It's necessary for one to elicit a reciprocal arousal from above. Hanikras mishem in Kabbalah, it's called halos mayim nukvim. In Bekisve Arizal, in the books of the Arizal, a blessed memory, as the elevation of Mayim Nukvin Kamli Abrivin Man, the arousal of the feminine waters that serve as a recipient of the flux of the male waters, Mayim Duchrim. So we have the Mayim Nukvim, the waters from below that waken up the waters from above. The same applies to here as well. The power of vegetative growth is a spiritual power that encompasses all fruits and vegetation. That's to make a bracha, because really it's a spiritual power. That earth has potential, and that a garden has a strength is all a spiritual concept. The Eibishter made it that way. It is a spiritual state and such that is far too lofty to descend spontaneously to a level in which can make physically produce produce grow. The actual growth can only come about as a result of the elevation of the feminine waters of a particular fruit or grain. This arouses within the universal vegetation property the particular manifestation necessary for the growth of the specific kind of produce that is inherited in the kernel or seed of the zone. So that's the beauty of the whole situation. Basically, and that's why, again, I make a bracha. Everything I buried a pri hadama, who created the fruit of the earth, because the Eibishter is the one. God is the one who gives who brings out, says that we take the kernel. When you take the kernel and you're going to put it into a fertile earth, the earth is going to wake up and create a tree, and it's going to be a phenomenal tree that'll be far and beyond what the kernel was, and it's going to be able to create beautiful fruit that you're going to have. It's going to be a delicious fruit, and it's going to have many other kernels or create many other trees, etc., etc. We're still in the middle of the analogy, but I'm sure everybody can see where the Alter Rebbe is going with this analogy. But here is where the Tanya ends. Today is the 27th day of the month, which is chapter 120 to chapter 134. Say those 15 chapters, called the 15 Shira Mailis, you have done the chitas of the day. The Rebbe writes today on the 27th day of Elul, of Menachemov. Oh. We're coming closer to the month of Elul. The Rebbe says the month of Elul is the month of reckoning. It's called the Chodesh HaCheshbon. It's a reckoning. In the material world, if a businessman is to conduct his affairs properly and with great profit, he must periodically take an accounting and correct any deficiencies. Likewise, in the spiritual avodah, serving of God, throughout the year, all Israel are occupied with Torah, mitzvahs, developing and expressing good traits. The month of Elul is the month of reckoning, when every Jew, each measured to his abilities, whether a scholar or businessman, must make an accurate accounting in his soul of everything that occurred in the course of the year. Each must know the good qualities of his service of God and strengthen them. He must also be aware of deficiencies in himself and his service and correct them. Through this excellent preparation, one merits to a good, sweet year, materially and spiritually. So we have to get ready to the month of Elul to make sure that we make the right reckoning. I wish you all a wonderful and beautiful and happy day. And Mitcham, I invite you all, my friends, at 10 a.m. we are going to learn beautiful Sikha of the Lubavitcher Rebbe on the portion of the week. You're welcome to come to Chabad or to Zoom or direct. Have a beautiful and happy and healthy day. I wish you all the best.
Thank you.